part 2. Now let us look at the Jewish mystical side of things, the concept of Tzimtzum, contraction, concealment, emanation. In Lurianic Kabbalah, Tzimtzum, which is a Hebrew word for contraction or constriction, describes the primordial act by which Hashem made creation possible. Prior to creation, only the infinite divine light, Ohr Ein Sof, filled all reality. The Arizal thought that God, quote, contracted himself at the center of his infinite light, was drawing or concealing that light to the sides, and leaving a void or vacant space, halal panui, in the middle. Within this metaphysical empty space, a finite universe could come into existence without being overwhelmed by infinity. This act is concealment. The Ohr Ein Sof is hidden, creating darkness in which independent worlds can emerge. Importantly, Tzimtzum is not a literal removal of God's essence, but a self-imposed hiding of divine presence. Much as a brilliant light might be dimmed or filtered so that creatures can exist in its shadow. After this contraction, concealment, Kabbalah says that Hashem shone a single ray of light, called Kav, into the empty space to begin the process of creation. That thin beam of light, of divine light, reintroduced illumination in a measured, structured way, forming the Sphirot, the 10 emanations or attributes, and the spiritual worlds, eventually leading to our physical universe. In effect, there was a controlled reemergence of light after the initial darkness, allowing creation to unfold gradually. The doctrine of Tzimtzum thus has two key phases. Phase 1, contraction and concealment. Infinite light is withdrawn, compacted, resulting in a central void of darkness where Hashem's presence is hidden. This vacant space is the arena for finite cosmos. Phase 2, emanation and illumination. A narrow line of divine light is drawn into the void from the surrounding infinity, seeded into the darkness. This ray expands and emanates the building blocks of all worlds. Rabbi Chaim Vital, Arizal's primary disciple, records in this process in Eitz Chaim. He, the infinite one, contracted himself in the point at the center, distancing the light to the sides around the central point, so that a void remained. After this Tzimtzum, he drew down from the surrounding infinite light a single straight line into that void. In that space, he emanated, created, formed, and made all the worlds. The mystical narrative was radically new in its time. It solved the philosophical paradox of how a finite, imperfect world could originate from an infinite, perfect creator. In essence, Hashem did not shrink or reduce his infinity in a physical sense, but he concealed it, a voluntary self-limitation described as a quantum leap from infinity to finitude. Kabbalists emphasize that Tzimtzum is not a literal removal of Hashem, for nothing can exist outside of Hashem. It is a hiddenness or veiling of the infinite light, such that with the void, things experience themselves as separate and not overwhelmed by divinity. From the divine perspective, the infinite light still pervades everything. The concealment is an illusion of perspective necessary for us to have our own existence. Notably, Arizal's conception of creation as beginning with darkness, the vacated space, followed by a beam of light, has metaphorical resonance with modern cosmology's idea of a Big Bang emerging from a pre-existing void. In Tzimtzum, darkness precedes light, a point echoed by the sequence in Bereshis, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and Hashem said, "Let there be light." Kabbalists explain, even referred to the initial hidden state as the primordial darkness, or black light, from which light eventually shines. Let's now look at some parallels between Tzimtzum and black hole cosmology. When we place these two frameworks side by side, the scientific scenario of a spinning black hole forming a spawning universe and the mystical doctrine of Tzimtzum followed by emanation, a number of conceptual and structural parallels emerge. Contraction into singularity versus divine contraction. In a gravitational collapse, for example, a star collapsing into a black hole, matter is crushed toward an effective singularity, a point of near infinite density. In Tzimtzum, the infinite light is conceptually contracted away from the center as if compressed to an extreme at the periphery, leaving a figurative singularity of infinite intensity outside the void, which seems like a clear description of the contraction of light into a point of singularity, a characteristic property of the black hole. In other words, the infinite light was squeezed into a non-space analogous to a single point, corresponding to the way a black hole's mass is squeezed to, in other words, a point in classical general relativity. Next, decaded space and event horizon. After Tzimtzum, the remaining void is described as a hollow, uniformly circular space. The circle drawn around this vacuum hints at the event horizon of a black hole. The event horizon is the spherical boundary surrounding a black hole, a point of no return beyond which light and information cannot escape. Similarly, the empty space of Tzimtzum is encircled by the withdrawn light. The infinite light now surrounds the space. In both cases, there is a boundary between an inside region where normal rules differ, either a physical singularity or metaphysical absence of revealed Hashem, and an outside region, the external universe or the transcendent infinite. Nothing inside can be seen from outside, a parallel between the concealment of Hashem's presence inside the void and the hiding of whatever happens inside a black hole beyond its event horizon. The void of Tzimtzum is like a black box, like a cosmic black box where creation can unfold, just as the inside of a black hole is cut off from our observation. Next, Mother Universe collapse and Tzimtzum as a big crunch. Kabbalists intriguingly anticipated something akin to modern cyclic cosmology. Arizal's doctrine can be seen as a kind of big crunch preceding the Big Bang, an initial infinite world contracted and imploding spiritually, then giving rise to our finite reality. In fact, Arizal himself described Tzimtzum as an infinite withdrawal that allowed a finite beginning, and contemporary commentators explicitly compared it to cosmological contraction. Perhaps Tzimtzum is something similar to the modern concept of big crunch. When we read about the initial contraction of the center and the subsequent expulsion of the light to the periphery to create space, you can't help but to see similarity to cosmological model of the big bounce, a contraction followed by expansion, or the collapse of Mother Universe into a black hole, followed by a Big Bang expansion giving birth to a daughter universe. In other words, Tzimtzum foreshadows the idea of our Big Bang may have been preceded by a collapse, a prior universe or state imploding just as Hashem's infinite light imploded into concealment. Emanation ray and white hole explosion. After contraction, Kabbalah's narrow beam of light, called Kav, enters the void, is conceptually akin to the expansion of the new universe from a black hole. In Poplavsky's model, once the collapse halts, the pent-up energy rebounds and shapes outward in a big bounce. instantiating a new expanding universe. This could be likened to a white hole eruption, the time reversal of a black hole, effectively spitting out the matter and light. Some cosmologists have theorized that the Big Bang was a white hole. Kabbalistically, the Kav, or line of light entering the void, serves as the initial creative force, analogous to a controlled Big Bang of divine energy in the empty space. Both scenarios involve a single directed input of energy into a dark void, a focused beam that sees creation. We might even draw a parallel between the Kav's straight line and the notion of a preferred axis in our universe. Poplavsky's baby universe in a black hole has a built-in axis of rotation inherited from the black hole, reminiscent of how the Kav provides a directional structure from above to below in the formerly empty space. In each narrative, something linear and oriented emerges after the contraction, a breach from the outside to inside. In the cosmic case, it's a wormhole or a white hole channel. In the mystical case, it's a ray of divine light. Jets and limited light. We noted that real spinning black holes often produce jets of high energy particles and radiation from their poles. Most of the infalling matter gets trapped beyond the horizon, but a fraction by complex electromagnetic processes is collimated and flung outward in visible form. This is a powerful image of how Tzimtzum operates. Most of the infinite light is withheld, but a narrow leak or controlled output is allowed, restricting much of the light while allowing a small portion to shine through. In Hasidic writings, the remaining ray is described as extremely faint compared to the original fullness, just enough to create multifarious creations. Similarly, the black hole's jets carry away only a tiny fraction of mass energy. Most remains hidden inside, yet those jets can light up entire galaxies. The accretion disk itself, though intimately spiraling into the darkness, shines brilliantly before crossing the horizon, much like the last glimmer of divine light as the thresholds of the void. In both contexts, we see the theme that concealment is not absolute. There is a channeled emanation that escapes or is projected, whether it's astronomical radiation or spiritual light. This balance of hidden versus revealed energy is central to both black hole physics and Tzimtzum. Information paradox and the Rishimu. In Kabbalah, even after the contraction, something of the light remains in the void in latent form. Some texts speak of Rishimu, or imprint or residue of the infinite light that stays behind as a subtle background, enabling the Kav to interact with it and form stable creation. Interestingly, in modern physics, the black hole information paradox led to the idea that the information about everything that fell in it is not truly lost, but somehow preserved on the event horizon, as per the holographic principle. I must say, I will have a whole separate class on information paradox and Pirkei Avos. That's a whole big separate topic. While we won't delve deeply into this technical issue, it's evocative that a trace of what was there still exists hidden, just as Hashem's presence isn't truly gone from the void, only obscured. Some have drawn explicit parallels between the horizon encoding information and the Rishimu, or compared the all-consuming gravity of Hashem's infinity to a kind of a divine black hole from which nothing could escape unless Hashem willed it so. The Lurianic void, like a black hole's interior, is a mystery domain, seemingly empty to those outside, yet containing seeds or data that will define all the structure inside.